Hey folks, I thought I'd make this additional video to help with the previous Arduino video. This is going to be a couple of exercises that will help you to expand your understanding. This is because I want you to really not just copy the code. I think it's a good idea to go beyond it, to build on it, to really understand how to compose your own. So I'm going to explain a couple of concepts. Now the first one, of course, is adding features. As you might start to notice, a lot of the code in programming is a lot like Legos, where things are modular, things are self-contained, and once you understand one thing, you can add it to another. Of course, when you add a new feature to your code, you're almost always going to try to add, first of all, test it with a very simple script. So let me give you an example. In the case of our Rangefinder LCD project, the previous video, let's say we want to add a button, okay? Well, first of all, we can add the button, but first, we want to test the button, especially if you're a beginner. You want to test the button by creating a very simple button script, okay? So first, in order to do that, of course, you have to know what's going on. So in our case, we'll make a little button schematic here. Here's our contacts, and here's our button when it's not touching. This side's positive. This side connects to the negative through a 10 kilo ohm resistor, 10,000 ohms. And this here is our button 6, pin 6 on the Arduino. So when it's open, we get 0 volts, okay, because it's coming through ground. Now when our button is pressed down, the positive is the one that's actually feeding, and in this case, the resistor keeps ground from touching, so our pin 6 will actually receive a closed, which is actually 5 volts. Okay, in this case, this is high, and this is low. And let me go ahead and give you a quick example. So if we create a test script, I'm going to go through this very quick because most of this you've seen before, but I thought you would like to see how we do this. So we go ahead and define our button pin and our button state, our basic serial to tell us what's going on. And then we define our button, we call our button state as a function of this digital read, and then we set our if-then statements. So if our button is high, which is pressed, it's going to say that it's pressed, and if it's low, it's going to be the else statement. We don't have to say if the other because it's anything else. Okay, so we're going to say nothing if it's not pressed, and then we delay a couple hundred milliseconds. Now let me go ahead and show you on the code here. So we send the code, okay, we go ahead and test it, and notice, there we go. Notice its state changes when I let it go too. Press it again, and let it go. So it should be clear that our code works. That's good, good news. Okay, so if your feature works as expected, then move on to the next step and integrate it to the code. Now remember, we're doing this because at the beginning, many beginners think, oh, this is a waste of time. Well, guess what? You're going to waste even more time when you make terrible mistakes and you can't figure out because you can't figure out what is the problem, okay? So now if you're a beginner, if your simple code doesn't work or something there, then troubleshoot it until it works, okay? But like I said, you know, we're doing this to actually save you time because this is going to make sure that your new code and your circuit are not the problem. And that's what you really, really need to eliminate. And as a beginner, this is what you're going to run into the biggest problems. So save yourself the headaches. I know it sounds like more work, but you're going to notice it's actually less work. Okay? So let's go ahead and move on to the next part, which is nested functions. So nested functions are a very fundamental part of programming, so you're going to see it all the time, and I thought you'd want to see this. This is like your typical if-else statement, like I showed you with the button right now. Now, in nested functions, the golden rule here is always write your logic diagram first. Now, there's many ways. I'm just going to keep it simple here, but the point is, give yourself some sort of a plan so you know what's going on, okay? So let me go ahead and give you an example. If instead of using 2 lights like in our previous project we wanted it to be 3 lights, okay, the first thing that we do is first we define what's going to happen. We have an input and we're going to apply certain rules, and from those rules we're going to get an output. So in our example, if our distance, remember that we have a value called distance, if it goes from 0 to almost 10, or from 10 to 20, or 20 plus, we can actually set certain rules to be followed based on the value of distance. Or if you remember our previous one, our button state, okay, if our button state was high, or if it was low, we could then set it as either pressed or not pressed. Okay, so I'll give you a sample statement. Okay, now here's our button state, remember? Okay, so if we were to create our statement for our LEDs, if you go back to our previous, you're going to notice a slight difference. This is just the logic, okay, so I'm not really typing all the code, I'm just giving you the idea. Okay, so if our distance is less than 10, we turn on the red. Otherwise, we say else. You need that else. If our distance is less than 20, now notice, at this point it's already greater than 10, otherwise it wouldn't have reached here. We have yellow on, okay, and otherwise it's going to be greater than 20, in which case red goes off, yellow goes off, and green goes off. Or, I'm sorry, green goes on. Sorry about that. So, with those two in mind, I offer you these 2 exercises, okay? So the first one is make use of your 3 LEDs so that when the distance changes, okay, as in this example here, as your distance gets shorter, you go to yellow to red, okay? And the other part is use a button. When you press it, you should be able to get inches, there you go, or centimeters, based on whether that button is pressed. Okay, as you can tell, it kind of looks like a delayed, but everything is functional. You should be able to create similar code, so try it out and see if it works. Okay? Okay, take care and good luck.